Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise and really get to the heart of things. And today, we're grappling with something truly profound and, frankly, quite disturbing in American politics: the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. It's an event that's just sent these massive shockwaves, hasn't it, across the whole political landscape. It's sparking really intense reactions, forcing us all to look at some pretty uncomfortable truths about the divisions in our society.
Absolutely. What we're seeing here, it isn't just about one, single tragic event. This moment feels pivotal. It reflects much deeper currents really playing out in our national conversation. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the immediate, very diverse reactions to Kirk's death. We'll look at the political fallout, how it rippled out from Capitol Hill, and then critically, we'll shift gears a bit and look at some, well, frankly, surprising academic research, stuff that sheds light on the psychological reasons behind political conservatism. And finally, we'll explore what all this could mean for the future of the Republican Party itself.
Yeah, and we've pulled from a really wide range of sources for this, trying to get a comprehensive view. We've got reports from City Journal, The Times of India, Fox News, CBS News. We're also drawing on a pretty rigorous meta-analysis on political conservatism. It's from the Goldman School of Public Policy, and even looked at some public discussions, things happening on Reddit. Our mission today really is to help you navigate these complex layers, to understand not just what happened, but why it matters, hopefully giving you a clearer lens to view these political dynamics and the ideological shifts underway.
Okay, so let's start with the event itself, the immediate aftermath. Charlie Kirk was fatally shot September 10th, 2025. This was at Utah Valley University. Authorities pretty quickly identified the alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, 22 years old. And according to reports, he was radicalized online, influenced by anti-fascist and transgender politics. What's particularly striking and just tragically ironic is that Kirk was actually answering a question about transgenderism and mass shootings right at the moment he was murdered. So here you have this figure, someone who consistently championed debate, persuasion, and yet his life was ended by extreme violence. It's just such a stark rejection of the principles he advocated.
That contrast really hits home, doesn't it? That tension between dialogue and violence. Christopher Rufo, writing in the City Journal, he put it powerfully. He said Kirk did it all the right way, advocating for debate, persuasion, the ballot box. And you look at what he achieved. I mean, just 31 years old, built a huge organization, Turning Point USA, became a major media figure, advised the president, started a family. His impact in such a short time was just immense.
And the media reaction, widespread shock, almost this palpable sadness among conservatives. One report described it as a state of stupor. Vigils, memorials, they sprang up really quickly across the country. There was a big gathering at Arizona State University that was college Republicans and TPUSA. A prayer and reflection vigil at the Kennedy Center in D.C. And House Speaker Mike Johnson, he led another really symbolic one in the Capitol Statuary Hall.
Yeah, I saw that. A lot of prominent figures from the Trump administration spoke at that Kennedy Center vigil. People like Caroline Leavitt, Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They were reflecting not just on his life, but his impact, his legacy. And his wife, Erica Kirk, she made this incredibly powerful public statement. I mean, amidst her grief, she urged people, get involved in the Christian faith, in Turning Point USA, proclaiming, the movement my husband built will not die. That was a real rallying call.
Definitely. And following these, very emotional events, there were significant calls from different places for a de-escalation of political rhetoric. Speaker Mike Johnson, he specifically urged leaders, turn down the rhetoric, stop calling people Nazis and fascists, stop treating every policy dispute like it's some kind of existential threat.
Right.
And Senator Chris Coons also weighed in. He highlighted how the internet, unfortunately, seems to be, driving extremism.
Accelerating it. These statements, they really underscore this shared recognition, maybe, of the dangerous climate we're in, regardless of where you sit politically. Well, it's one thing to call for de-escalation, but it's another thing entirely to see how those calls actually land, right?
Yeah.
Especially in a landscape that's already so fractured. So what did we see when we looked at how different groups reacted? The reports were pretty stark. We saw reports of thousands of Americans, students, professors, even active duty military publicly cheering Kirk's assassination. And maybe even more surprising, a significant number of these people were apparently from helping professions, yet they were embracing this incredibly violent rhetoric. It just reveals this chilling acceptance of political violence in some areas.
That's a critical point. It really lays bare the deepening chasm, doesn't it? And in response to those celebrations, conservatives argued that firing people who cheered the murder was warranted. They drew a really sharp line between that and what they often call woke cancel culture. They basically said, look, dismissing a teacher for applauding political assassination, that's a fair consequence. It's not the same as policing rap lyrics or something. So it highlights this profound disagreement over what's acceptable public discourse, what accountability looks like.
And we saw this division play out so publicly on Capitol Hill. House Republicans, they seemed largely united. Speaker Johnson, Steve Scalise, Tom Emmer, Lisa McClain, they were all at that vigil. Emmer particularly lamented the fact that anyone would celebrate murder, but it is notable Fox News Digital reported that Democratic leaders were not seen in attendance at that specific Capitol vigil, though some Democrats, like Debbie Dingell and Tom Suozzi, were apparently spotted at other events.
Yeah, and the House chamber itself, it became a stage for this division, a moment of silence, which should have been, solemn. It just devolved into chaos. Representative Lauren Boebert requested a spoken prayer that was met with protests from Democrats, some reportedly shouting about a school shooting that happened the same day. It escalated quickly. Representative Anna Paulina Luna shouted back, "You all caused this." I mean, that intense exchange just captures the raw emotion, the deep partisan animosity right there.
Oh.
And then you had Representative Ilhan Omar in an interview offering a direct critique of Kirk's legacy. Said he downplayed slavery, called his words and actions over the last decade effed up.
So just no common ground there at all, it seems. Now, in terms of practical impact, these events did spur some action on security, right? The White House asked for, $58 million from Congress to increase security for executive and judicial branches, and Speaker Johnson committed to looking at options for congressional security, too.
Right. But amidst all of this division, the security concerns, we've also seen a really significant conservative mobilization. Turning Point USA, Kirk's organization, they're calling it a grief-to-growth phenomena. They've had something like 37,000 new chapter requests, a noticeable jump in job and volunteer applications since the assassination.
37,000. Wow.
Yeah. And this builds on their existing network, which was already huge, 900 college chapters, 1,200 high school chapters, and this upcoming celebration of life they're planning at State Farm Stadium in Arizona. Hotels are selling out. Former President Trump is planning to attend. It just shows the sheer scale of this grassroots response.
It really does.
So all these intense reactions we just talked about, the shock, the outrage, the calls to de-escalate, the division, it all begs this fundamental question, why? Why do people react this way? To really get at the forces at play, we need to go beyond the headlines. We need to delve into a deeper, more scientific understanding of political ideologies. And that's where this fascinating academic research comes in.
Right, because the surface-level political arguments often miss that deeper layer, don't they? This meta-analysis you mentioned, political conservatism as motivated social cognition, it suggests ideologies are adopted partly because they satisfy psychological needs. And crucially, it's not presented as like something wrong or pathological. It's a legitimate area of study. So how does looking at it this way, as something deeper within us, how does that change how we might think about political dialogue?
It changes it profoundly, I think, because it moves us beyond just arguing about policies to maybe understanding the underlying human motivations. The meta-analysis point to two central, kind of stable aspects of conservatism. First, there's resistance to change, an opposition to disruptive shifts, social, economic, legal, whatever, often driven by a genuine fear of change. And second, an endorsement of inequality, which sounds stark, but it means an acceptance of sort of hierarchical social arrangements.
Okay, so it's about these deeply ingrained preferences, almost. The study then breaks down the motivations behind these aspects into epistemic motives and existential motives. Let's start with epistemic. That sounds academic. Can you break that down a bit? What's it really mean for how people think?
Absolutely. Think of epistemic motives as basically the psychological need to make sense of the world. To reduce uncertainty, find clear answers. We all want certainty in an ambiguous world, right? But this research suggests conservatives often have a particularly strong drive for order, structure, definitive conclusions. The findings are pretty consistent. Conservatives tend to score higher on dogmatism, holding firmly to beliefs without much questioning, and intolerance of ambiguity, being less comfortable with uncertain situations. They also showed, on average, decreased cognitive complexity. That's the ability to juggle multiple perspectives on an issue.
Huh. That actually makes a lot of sense when you think about certain leaders, especially in uncertain times. Leaders who emphasize certainty, clear answers. I remember former President George W. Bush saying, "I know what I believe, and I believe what I believe is right." That really sounds like that need for certainty, doesn't it? And how it could appeal to people.
It absolutely does. That need for order, structure, closure, plus a tendency towards uncertainty avoidance, things like being unwilling to change work habits or rejecting new These are all part of those epistemic motivations. It's about a basic psychological preference for a predictable, orderly world.
Okay, so that's managing uncertainty, but then there are the existential motives. What are those about? How do they connect to conservatism?
Existential motives. They relate more to the underlying fears and anxieties that influence our ideologies. This research found a really strong link with what's called mortality salience, basically, the fear of death. When that fear is heightened, it often increases ideological defensiveness. People cling more tightly to their political beliefs, almost like a psychological shield against those deep anxieties. There's also a significant link to fear and threat in general, perceiving the world as dangerous, and a strong correlation with system instability, feeling like society is unstable or breaking down.
So if people feel more threatened maybe from a big event like a terrorist attack or even just economic uncertainty, that might actually make political conservatism more appealing, not necessarily as a conscious choice at that moment, but as a deeper psychological response to feeling like your existence or way of life is under threat.
Precisely. And what's really fascinating here is that these different motives, the epistemic need for certainty, the existential need for safety, they aren't separate buckets. They're deeply interrelated. They work together, contributing to why someone might adopt or express conservative attitudes. They shape how individuals react to things like fear and uncertainty in their environment. It paints this picture of a complex interplay between our deepest psychological needs and our political views, suggesting ideology isn't just about policy choices, but maybe reflects how we cope with the basic challenges of being human.
Which brings us right to the future and that huge, often debated question. What happens to the Republican Party when or if Trump is no longer the central figure? We looked at a Reddit discussion on this very topic, and there's this really strong sentiment that Trump has, as one user put it, ridiculously crafted a cult of personality. That the Republican Party is now, for many, simply the Trump Party. And many people there believe that the emoji elements fueled by what they described as xenophobia, racism, conspiratorial thinking will just continue, whether Trump is there or not. Yeah, the predictions in those online discussions, if Trump were to leave the stage, they included things like a huge fight, chaotic infighting between the Manji wing and the sort of pre-2016 GOP establishment. And it seems other potential figures, DeSantis, Vivek, Vance, they've struggled, so far anyway, to replicate Trump's unique charisma, his hold on voters. It suggests that Trump effect might be incredibly hard to just pass on to someone else.
So what are the potential futures people are kicking around for the GOP? The Reddit threads mentioned a few paths, maybe a return to a more moderate, centrist party to try and regain competitiveness, or a continuation of what some users called, in pretty strong terms, reflecting the heat of online debate, nativist populists just banging the same drum.
Very strong language used there.
Definitely. Or even the possibility of a whole new party emerging or the Republican Party kind of collapsing under the weight of these internal fights. There's also the idea that Trump's legacy, like Reagan's, will just be invoked constantly in political speeches for decades, shaping the party's identity even if he's not actively leading it.
And this raises a really important point, relevant for you, the listener. One Reddit user pointed out, pretty astutely I thought, that apathy, just assuming this won't happen to the United States, is dangerous. They called for accountability and, crucially, the need to address the core economic issues that arguably helped enable Trump's rise in the first place, suggesting that if those aren't resolved, we'll just keep facing these kinds of political challenges no matter who's in charge.
And that really is the relevance for you, listening now. Understanding these complex dynamics from those individual psychological drivers we talked about, the epistemic and existential needs, all the way up to party-level struggles, it's just crucial. It helps you engage more thoughtfully, hopefully, with the political landscape, with how American society is evolving. Seeing beyond just the day-to-day headlines to the deeper forces at play, it's about getting some clarity in what feels like a very confusing time.
So just to recap where we've been today, we went from the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk and its immediate polarizing ripples, through those academic insights into the psychology of conservatism, how our needs for certainty and safety shape our views, and finally, to those speculative but really vital discussions about the Republican Party's future. It's just this whole tapestry, isn't it? Woven with grief, division, psychology, and this profound uncertainty about what's next for American democracy.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe something for you to ponder. If big societal events that trigger fear and uncertainty can so profoundly shape our political ideologies, our reactions, what responsibility do we all bear as citizens, as leaders? What's our role in shaping the narratives, the environments that either crank up those fundamental human motivations or maybe help alleviate them, all in the pursuit of a more constructive political discourse? It's a big question we're thinking about long after this deep dive ends, as we all try to navigate the currents of our time.